Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Amusing Panda live stream, your musing and amusing source for all things Warmachine. Today, I am joined by Gun Bunny's veteran producer Keith.
Yeah, I get to add my own self to the stage now, huh? Right?
Wow,
I know.
fancy schmancy.
Are we an hour early? Are we an hour early?
Is what time is it? What time is it on the East Coast? Is it 8?
It's 8. Doesn't seem like an
I
hour
feel
early
like
to
we're on
me.
time. I
Yeah, I
mean,
do
I
too.
think I think the difference is like I was running around trying to get like the outline and stuff set up, and I was in my chair early, so I usually get the stream scheduled like 30 minutes beforehand, but got it going early.
A little behind the scenes peek here, Cosmo. I didn't mention this to you, but when I was setting up the stream last time and doing all the all the information you have to type in before you can get to the part where it allows you to go live. I
Mhm.
saw the little thumbnail thing that I had never been able to see before, so which is why I put the thumbnail on the last episode. And if I was not away from home, I would have made a thumbnail for this one. I just didn't have time to mess with it today, but I'll try to have all thumbnails going forward so that we can get back on track with that. My
All
my
good.
visual trolling must continue.
Yeah. Well, the off season is always a bit of a weird time. So we got some space to get in our technical beautification and stuff to launch with in January once things pick back up again. Speaking of the off season, that's the main segment for tonight. So Warmachine, if you've been around this game for a while and you've started to travel for events and competition, um, or even if you just play casually at the local game store and it becomes announced, hey, by the way, in January, like 2 months from this announcement, we're going to have a major overhaul to the way the game is played. um, this has been, the off season has been a factor for, especially if you travel competitively for Warmachine for years now, but it's also paired with, the biggest rework and game change that we see all year, uh, coming after the holidays. So we're looking forward to January 21st. This has obviously been a thing last year and the year before that. Um, so it leads to this weird bit of downtime, like, okay, I'm playing the game now, but it's not necessarily going to be where the game is a few months from now.
Well,
um
me being a new or a returning player, I guess, for to War Machine, and I have not been through one of these January patch updates before. Like how much how much changes should I expect? Like, is there some like kind of idea you can give me as a returning player? Like I've been playing for a couple of months now. I'm kind of used to my models a little bit. I'm starting to learn some of what they do. Like how much do factions change in January?
mhm. So it can be a pretty fair amount. So what we saw last year was sort of the year of big pig dominance and uh oh gosh, what else changed? I'm mostly just remembering Big Pig. Kruger was only 5 points. So you see things like some of the outlier nutso powerful models get brought into line.
Trike.
Uh, yeah. There's no way the trike makes it through this new year unscathed. Um, Yeah, so you see models like that get touched, and then a lot of what you see is underperforming models get updated. So one example is
Winter
the
Girk.
Zephyr used to be significantly cheaper, but significantly less durable and significantly less impactful. Yep. JD Colorho. Yeah, balloons, the old propelled rule used to be like move 10 inches or move 12 inches, and you can break that any way you choose. So like I would often do like on turn one, my battle brig moves 0, sky hooks a guy, and then does its follow on move on 12. So all those got standardized to, speed 7 plus a repo value, mostly to cut down on egregious threat ranges from models with like spray 12s and stuff like that. Um, oh, it's Justin. Hello, Justin. Oh, we keep hitting the same button. Sorry. Yeah, what else got changed? Cats lost an inch of melee range. Dusk this past year got punished for the year before that, which is something we see intermittently in game balance. I think Crix spent an entire 6 years doing penance for Mark 1, Mark 2. And then yeah, just some minor tweaks. Like I think Eidolons used to be Mat 6, Rat 5 when the game initially launched. Very expensive, had a bunch of problems. They got tuned up. But this year we know we're looking at even more substantial changes than probably we've become accustomed to in the past. So I would say like buckle up for your first January back, because it's gonna be a bumpy one. Oh, we got Dan Jones in the in the chat. Yes, Dusk did get punished. I would I would I
Go
would
ahead.
almost say Storm Legion benefited more from the Hellslingers cadre than it did from any particular internal balance changes to the faction. But
I mean,
broadly, you're right.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, I think like obviously there's going to be broad changes because they're doing away with spell rack, so that means that every caster has to be touched, right? Like they've got
Hmm.
to have probably between 2 to 3 spells added to their spell list, and if nothing else were to happen this year, it would probably, I'm guessing it would probably be a bigger change than anything of previous years just from that. And
Yep.
then if you're talking about changing mats and rats across the board, that
Yep.
in and
And
of itself,
generally lowering lethality.
yeah. Well, so this is my thought about generally lowering lethality. I would caution against lowering power and mat slash rat on the same model, because that has a multiplicative effect, right? Like
Hmm.
if you're gonna lower the POW, don't also lower the mat. You know what I mean? Or if you're gonna lower the mat, don't also lower the POW, because if you do that, like it's like it's a very powerful nerf when you do things like that. Or you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
just hit one side, don't hit both. But just back to what I was saying though, even if they were just to adjust mat and POWs across the board as well, I think that would might be a bigger change than what we've seen previously, um, as well. So between just doing those two things, you know what I mean, that might be twice as big of changes or more than
Hmm.
what has been seen in
Right.
the last long time.
Well,
Um,
a lot of the comments from Steamforged games have been really emphasizing that the major changes are going to be in docking hit values. This is also compoundingly affected by the rack going away, because you'll see the loss of ubiquitous spells like Carnage, or the ubiquity of Silence of Death, or stuff like that. You will also see loss of ubiquitous defensive measures like Windstorm, or basically everyone having guaranteed accesses to armor buffs when they know it's going to be highly relevant.
right.
So like the changes are moving in both directions.
I,
um
I guess kind of what I'm saying though, I don't know that we're necessarily going to see a lot of targeted nerfs or buffs,
mhm,
because of the wide ranging changes that we're going to be seeing across the board. Like it seems like it's a pretty big ask to have to make all of those general sweeps, right, between the spell rack and mat and rat hits, right? And then
mhm,
also have to go back and make quote targeted buffs. Like obviously they have to hit the outliers, right? Like things are just very much overperforming. But um, I don't know. It seems like a big ask to ask for all to do all that.
Mhm. Would you say you feel worse missing an attack or doing minimum damage? It really depends on what the attack type is. I would say, certainly playing Brine Bloods, but I'm sure Orgoth players or Shadow Flame players would echo the sentiment like I'm used to a world where you just need not snakes most of the time to get whatever hit you're looking for. Does that I mean, I'm sure, like, especially when it comes to activating rangers, gravediggers can feel very much that way. Is that about right?
I would say, to answer your question more directly, JVR, or JRV, sorry. I I want to say that I think it's a great question because honestly, like once I've hit an attack, I already get that, like, you know, what is it? Not dopamine. Yeah, dopamine rush for, all right, I hit. You know what I mean? And then if I roll derpy damage afterwards, I'm always like, well, at least I hit. You know what I mean? But if you don't hit, you don't even get to roll damage, right? So like, you only get to roll dice once when you miss, right? You get to roll dice twice when you hit. You know what I mean? Even if the damage is low, right? And who doesn't love rolling dice? So I don't know. I it is a great question in terms of like game design. Like you kind of almost want all of the attacks to hit because it's going to make you feel better about playing the game. So I think that was a very good loaded question. I'm not sure if you meant to load it or not.
Mhm.
Um, uh, to ask.
That's that's interesting that rolling dice is a factor in it. My mental reward schedule has been rewired so much that, like, I love every time I don't have to roll. So, like, not getting to roll a damage roll is like psychologically net neutral for me.
Yeah, but you also missed the attack. So I don't
Oh,
know.
for
Maybe.
sure. It sucks.
Yeah. So that's
Um,
that's kind of how I feel. At least if you do derpy damage, like you've at least gotten something out of like hitting the attack, right? On
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
base level.
I suppose that's true. Well, all this is by way of saying that the game is going to look quite substantially different over and above what we've seen in past updates. Or if it's your first time, like the Justin here, I dislike low damage rolls more. It steals those precious seconds. Absolutely true.
It does. It does.
Oh man. Yeah, and you have to do the math more intensively because you're not just looking at a binary, you're looking at margin too. So it's more cognitive cycles. Um but yeah, so it's a weird thing, right? To be playing a game as one of your big hobbies and to know I might not be playing the game I'm playing now may not be the same game I'm playing in 2 months, right? Um, so I think there are some strategies, and everybody has the holidays. You're visiting with friends and family and stuff, but we also know we're going to be waiting 3 weeks into the new year for that juicy rules drop. So I've assembled here, just based on my past experience, some things I think will help make the game feel, I mean, often for me it feels like not quite wasted time or energy, but like, am I, I'm out with my friends, I'm having a good time, but am I really going to see dividends on this? Or, am I sinking time into a game that no longer exists?
Cosma, I have to derail the conversation to say two things.
Yeah.
First, I really do appreciate your hat and shirt combination. I think that was very well put together. Second, with the lowering of the lethality in the game, do you think that that's going to really devalue the relevance of guns? Because if it's harder to kill things because things are less lethal, are people going to need to get into the control zones sooner, and not try to write out games as much because things aren't necessarily going to die? Or do you think that it doesn't matter because people are just going to still try to derp. Or try to just score control points and hope they can eke out
Mhm.
an extra one over somebody else. But if things aren't dying as easily as they are right now, right? Like how much more dedicated like force are you going to need to actually clear a flag or clear a zone or clear a terrain, a scenario terrain piece? And does that mean, because I've always felt like melee is going to give you the better POWs, the more volume of attacks, the more meaningful attacks, because you're getting charges, which is 3 dice, or things like that. Like, are guns going to be able to do the job in this next release that they're doing now? Like, are they going to end up kind of being side debuffed for winning on
Right.
scenarios?
Right. That's a tricky thing. And I mean, like the Steamforge guys said at the lock and load keynote, this is a design situation where you move one lever and a bunch of other levers move as a result, independent of this, or dependent on this. It changes a lot of the space we're in. One of the things that has been mentioned in passing is that the range of weapons is also going to be revisited, particularly targeting sprays, but also that this may affect other guns too. So we could be looking at a game dynamic where it's like, yeah, we're trying to eke out pieces, but getting in range to shoot may put you uh in a more dangerous position because ranges come down and because you need to make a bit of a harder commit. So you could entirely be right that this leads to an accelerated, faster game that colloquially breaks from like the European model of playing significantly more slowly and forcing action. Another one of those levers that's going to move a lot of things unseen is the changing face of scenario.
That's true. I mean, and we don't really have any insight at all into the scenario. I can only assume that something like color guard is going to go away when we're talking about
Nobody
scenario.
likes color guard.
But the other thing, there's some statistical outliers on some of the other scenarios where if you go like, if you're either first or second, depending on what the scenario is, you have a significantly higher win rate than you would otherwise. I don't remember the name
Mhm.
of the scenario, but there's one where as a second player, you get to choose the scenario terrain and everything else is pretty much even.
Yeah,
Um,
that's two fronts.
2 fronts. And my understanding is that, and I haven't done the Longshanks research, so I'm speaking a little out of turn here, but is that the second player tends to have a higher win rate on
Mhm.
that scenario specifically. So, maybe some of that stuff will be looked at, or maybe we'll just get entirely new wild things that they're trying, which I think I'm all for that as well. I mean, like, let's keep it fresh, let's keep it new, let's try new ideas, let's
Mhm.
fail at those ideas, so hey, we know what not to do in the future, but let's have fun doing them in the meantime. Let's get it all out there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wait, so I mean, you're right that it's another vector on which the game can change, like the scenarios itself and the role of guns. But just like everybody hates color guard and like it's virtually guaranteed we ain't gonna see that sucker again. Um, you know, everybody knows also where the problem models are. The models that don't really work well, and the stuff that is like almost certainly going to get targeted, directly focused, like buffs or revision, or may just find itself in a new place in the metagame. So while we don't know the face of the future, we can make some educated guesses and start turning some of our games into actually rewarding remunerative practice that will give you an advantage in the new metagame because the sets of tools you're going to be using are different. um so let's see. I mean, just in terms of general tips for the off season and to have your games feel more meaningful and fun, my first one is hop factions. um if you've been playing the same army for an entire year, you can often feel a lot of sunk cost going into that revision period and not knowing if your tools are going to stay the same. um use it as an excuse to try out something you've always wanted to try out, or something on the back burner that aren't that second army that you've been painting up, or you know, give yourself a change of pace, like a nice big palate cleanse, because for me in particular, like, I rage quit Storm Legion, I think in the 2023 to 24 rebalance. And I wish I had given myself a bit of a break from the faction.
Well,
It's a good way to like reduce attachment to current state of rules and just to try something different.
let me ask you this, Cosmo. Like, what if you just, you played, say you played Trolls all year last year, right? And you don't have a second army on the back burner or anything like that, but maybe you're thinking about faction swapping. Like, what kind of things would you think about uh, on like how you what factions you might be interested in if you were to like maybe do a faction swap or start getting maybe you just want to kind of get into a new faction like what you went
Mhm.
from Storm Legion to Trolls, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I can't imagine that those factions play at all the same, right? I
quite
haven't really
different.
played, yeah, right. So like what are some things that you decided, like when you were deciding to go into Trolls, like what was your decision about? Like, I obviously it wasn't just I'm going to try this out for a week, and all of a sudden it was like a year later, uh,
So, I mean, for me, what went on in that process was, I was not happy with the state that Storm Legion landed in. I already owned Winter Core, and I went to one event like, "Oh, we'll play some Winter Core," and like, oh, I still don't like where this faction is at. Like, I feel like I have to work too hard to get my wins,
mhm.
like as though I'm playing uphill against my faction. And I know there are people uh like Nate or Spinball Dan or Rick Co, although he defected, who had probably challenged me on that, but like I just didn't feel like the gas was there. Got picked up by a WTC team. Sean Hopkins is captaining, and he's like, I'm playing Orgoth. I'm like, crap. Orgoth was probably where I was going to jump ship to if I could. I guess I'll switch to Brine Bloods because I had a local who I was playing against with some regularity. I'm like, this faction's pretty impressive.
So you
Um,
you kind of made your decision because you saw it in action, and you were happy with
mhm,
the results that you were seeing with the faction, and or maybe you were like, oh, maybe if I had a similar army, but I just tweaked it a little bit, I mean, it would be more my play style, or something like that, or
yeah.
a play style that you'd be interested in playing.
Mhm,
Um, I have a couple of things that I was thinking about if I wanted to change faction, or think about playing another faction. Maybe I would think about the things that I already enjoy playing. Like, I'm currently playing Gravediggers, right?
mhm,
And I really enjoy kind of playing not a brick, but like a very beefy kind of faction, or not faction, but lists. I enjoy playing very beefy like lists that have like a lot of boxes and armor and things like that. Like, maybe I would think about switching into a faction that does like that sort of beef thing differently or better, like maybe Old Kador, for example, that I can just get really cheap jacks, and run FA on
mhm,
those, even if they don't necessarily perform quite as well, but I can get more of them and be beefier, and still maybe even they have medium infantry, which Gravediggers doesn't currently have. Like, that would be maybe a faction I would consider going into for that reason, because it's a play
right.
style that I like. And while Gravedigger does it pretty good because of synergy, they probably don't do it like the best, right? Like, there's
Mhm.
definitely some rabbit holes to explore, on doing that. Let's see here. From JRV, you want from Dusk to Dark Ops. Rule of cool. Yeah, there is that too. Like, there's a lot of popular factions out there. You know what I mean? Like, give them a try, see why they're popular. That's a legit reason to faction jump, especially
Mhm.
if you've got a friend or somebody that plays in your local meta. Maybe you do a little bit of just faction trading, as it were, for a few games, or I've gone to tournaments in the past where, a buddy of mine was playing Circle and I was playing Signar, and we were like, yeah, let's just swap for the thing. And I was like, this is what I have. What do you want? And what do you want me to bring? What lists do you want to bring? You know what I mean? Like, put
Mhm.
it together, And he was like, I want to play Striker One. And I'm like, that guy's an idiot. I mean, Striker One's great. Why would you want to play that guy? But he was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And he did. And he was like, Wolves of Orboros, those guys are trash. I'm like, what do you mean they're trash? They're amazing. And I was like, bring all the units of wolves. I'll win with them. So like those things can be fun too for kind of
Yeah.
getting into. Um,
That might actually be a fun one if you've got like local steamrollers between now and the new rules go live. Just work out with a friend a faction swap for the event.
I had a lot of fun doing that. I mean, I was disappointed that oops. I was disappointed that um
You were disappointed in choosing wolves?
no, I was not disappointed in that. They cracked the hardest armor, despite what people said. Well, nearly. I mean, they killed
The sh
off an
they
entire unit
the
of
thickest armor.
killed off an entire unit of storm blades under Striker One's feet turn with arcane shield up. So you know they just didn't kill two units, which is what I kind of needed to. That was my fault. If I would have purified, I would have killed off two full units of storm blades with those wolves. So that's a story for another time. That was me being an idiot player, not them failing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't even remember where I was going. Sorry. Go ahead, Cosmo.
Faction hopping. Well, I mean, I'm sure like among Warmachine players, like most people probably have their Christmas list replete with probably another faction that looks exciting. So it's a good time to just try that out. Another recommendation I would make is giving legacy armies a look. Given the changes we're seeing to prime armies, particularly the rack going away, that offered a consistency advantage for prime armies versus legacy armies that may not be there. They won't necessarily be able to adapt, or attenuate as consistently to what you're doing in a legacy faction. And given the balance patches, we may find some surprise winners coming out of this. Also, especially because, presumably the prime factions are going to get most of the attention.
Right. Well, before we even go to that subject, and I know you're kind of itching to get to this because I see spoiler alert, everybody. I see War Room is queued up in the background for Cosmo. So, he's come loaded for bear for this one. But, there's a couple of other things that I would say are in consideration if you wanted a faction hop. Maybe there's some things that you would like to be able to do with your faction, but it doesn't quite support it as well as you would like it to, but maybe there's some other factions that do support it well, and that might be a good opportunity for you to kind of like jump into the dojo with those models on War Room, or maybe find a local player that you can army swap for or swap with for a tournament, like we've already mentioned or whatever. And then another consideration is, it's the end of the year. You definitely have opportunities to kind of go wild and crazy, and maybe just try completely different play styles that, maybe you're happy with the play styles that your faction actually does, but it doesn't do these other play styles that you're not that comfortable with, and maybe you want to just faction swap and give that a try, for factions that can do whatever that play style is. Like,
Right.
maybe you don't like jamming, but there's maybe you play Lucant because he's the best jammer, and somebody in the area that's got a Lucant. You know what I mean? Um, go wild. You have the opportunity. Like, there's, once the year starts up again, you kind of start getting a little bit list locked in your army, right? Like, you
Mhm.
definitely feel like know what the most comfortable thing is for you to play. You get a lot of reps with that sort of thing, and then it gets kind of repetitive, right? But this is the
Right.
opportunity that you have during the end of the year to kind of like preset yourself for the following year, really kind
Yeah.
of get your idea of how you like to play, what you like to play, or try out the new things in case, hey, well, maybe I didn't really like this before, but I've learned a little bit more about the game. I've seen how I've lost some games to other people that do this sort of thing. So it gives me a little more insight on how it actually works, as opposed to just kind of theorying it. You know what I mean? So like
Right. Yeah.
there's a lot of opportunity to test out new things, do new things, try things, and have a little bit of different kind of fun at events if there are any local steamrollers around you that you can do kind of a faction swap with some buddies. So
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And I mean, there's a lot in that that's super important. One, it's during the year, after like balance drops, everything's new and shiny and you're experimenting around. And then probably about June, July, like you're settling into a nice, comfortable niche, like the butt-shaped outline in an office chair you spend too much time in. Um, so there is an opportunity to one, like, hyperdose novelty after most of a year of the comfortably familiar. And two, something that happens when you play a radically new list configuration, a new caster, or even a new faction. You often don't know where the lines are, like where the safety rails are, or like what the line is that's too aggressive or living too dangerously. You know what I mean?
oh, I know what you
um
mean.
and you will always get oh yeah, there is always war table as well. Guess what? You own all the models on the internet. Absolutely right, JRV. um but yeah, you if you're playing on the bleeding edge, that's where you'll generate most of your strategic insights for like what can I get away with, or what are the exploitation, like the highly exploitative plays that may be most valuable, versus if you're in your much more conservative, comfortable niche of experience. um uh so if you're hopping factions, or if you're experimenting with new stuff, you're going to be playing a lot closer to that line because you don't know where safety is. This is like, I think, Robert Conquest's first iron law of politics: every man is most conservative about what he knows best. um you get to be out there on the line, and on the line or past the line is where the best learning is.
Well, and to that kind of point too, I would say it really gives you the opportunity to go out there and lose some games confidently. And in
Yeah.
terms of learning, you learn so much from losing games and really trying to push that line and trying to find, like you said, on the bleeding edge. Like a lot of those bleeding edge games, you might lose because you're pushing the envelope harder than maybe you should. But that's where a lot of experience really, you really learn just so much about the faction, the army, the win conditions, your opponent, when you lose those games, and you really just push as hard as you can on like something that kind of like you're also really kind of conservative about your own precious models too, right? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And when they're not
Yeah.
your own models anymore, you can be less conservative and really, tighten down some things that you could have learned with your faction or with your models, but you were maybe a little afraid to because they're your models, or your faction.
Right. Yeah, yeah, you build up that preciousness in your mind.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, it is all a great excuse to take yourself outside the comfort zone and experience something new in the game. And there's a lot that can be productively put to use from that experience, whether the models in the metagame is gonna be totally different or not. Um yeah. I would say, as you're looking at new or old armies, particularly if you're investigating what is the balance potentiality of legacy forces, I would say pop open the old application and go scrolling through some of those legacy armies. If you're targeting something that, because we do know lethality is intended to go down in the new year, maybe if you've got a bulky legacy collection and you're interested in like, testing the waters for that, I would say go in and specifically look for armies with like old armies with disproportionately outperforming offense. One of the examples that comes clearly to mind is 5th Division. 5th Division's offense is shockingly better than you would expect based on past editions. Part of it is the Rockets getting branched into their own units. Part of it is the Conquest is an absolute goat right now. Maybe those guys survive balance changes, just because they're not under heightened scrutiny. But if I were looking at, I mean, I got rid of all my legacy models like before I moved out to Arizona. But if I were, placing speculative bets, I would be looking for disproportionate offense in legacy armies.
Well, kind of to that point that you were talking about for 5th Division, it's like the onus is kind of on Steam Forge to do something about Winter Core, because if they don't, I think 5th Division's actually already better than Winter Core.
I
mean-
low key, I think you're right. They actually are just better.
So like, they may be like, if you want to steal some early W's in the new year, and you have your Khador still lying around, and there's a lot of Khador. I mean, Khador was a very popular faction in Mark II and probably Mark III, and definitely in Mark I. Like,
They
there's
just have some
got
of
to
the
be a
coolest theming.
lot. Yeah, they've got a lot. I mean, they were sold a lot. I mean, it can't be too difficult if you've got a little bit of Khador to kind of buff it up, or if you already have a lot of Khador to maybe shine it up and put it out back on the table. I mean, there's got to be some real gold there. I mean, if I didn't get strong armed into playing Signar, I probably would have gone Khador myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, depending on the edition you did that in, your
Mark II,
willingness
I
to
mean.
continue to play the game might not still be there.
I don't
Although
know.
I gotta say, I loved Mark II Khador. I got into them toward the end of the edition, and they got some really quality releases then. But man, I loved me some Mark II Khador.
I started in not early Mark II, but well before the mid part of Mark II, but not like when it dropped, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having a conversation with Cass, and I told Cass, if I was playing Khador, this is what I would be playing. And, I don't remember what Cass's reply was, but I do remember that by the end of Mark II, what my suggestion was what was being played as the very end metagame of Khador. So like I definitely have that kind of play style where I'm very interested in running, the cheap heavies, the boxed infantry, and just like, jamming out of scenarios. Just a style that I like. And Khador definitely fits that style. I would have been happy to play Khador all throughout Mark II for that reason. I don't think I would have been bored with them at all. I mean, I just think that there was a lot of potential for innovation. Like, there's always what people proclaim is the best based on like statistical numbers, but it's like, it's like when you're playing D&D, like a fighter can do like tons of damage when it gets high level because of all the attacks it has, but like you don't really account for the fact that the fighter has to move across the screen and across the table in order to hit that next target, or that when he like hits the enemy really hard and it only has 3 hit points left, that all that damage ends up getting wasted. Just there's factors like that that are not really accounted for in the math, as it were. So I don't know. There's just a lot of places to explore.
Yeah, and it's almost like
And
I don't
Kato
know
has
for
Butcher 1, don't they?
Yeah, they have Butcher 1.
Like,
they have the the
they're already going to
Warjacks
have
get
more
boosted to hit
offense than the
melee
rest
and
of Prime factions.
yeah. Turns out Butcher 1 is, a 23-year champ of manufacturing great offense. Oh, for the motherland indeed. And it looks like we got an Alex in the chat too. Hey, over to you, Alex R. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of panning for gold that can be done in legacy armies, and you know just the like the fact of the spell racks going away is going to be a natural attenuation. So if you got them, like this is a great chance to like you said, pull some early W's by being a step ahead of the metagame. Excited to break out Grimkin again post update. Yeah, Lord knows where Grimkin are going to fall. I mean, I anticipate they're probably going to be one of those factions that's brought into 3D print land. But yeah, it'll be interesting because they've had a fair amount of metagame attention since the start of the edition. This year was like their first real drop off from being like, very high in the stack of competitive threats.
I was gonna say also, like, one of the things that really helped push the newer factions or the new release factions up over the legacy factions, I think, was the spell rack. And with the spell rack, going away, that might, kind of deflate the power level of the newer factions to the to a point where the legacy factions are really not that much different,
Mhm.
power wise, and maybe even creeping back above the power level of some of the air quotes newer factions. So, like, without the spell rack, I mean, Grimkin may, very much be Grimkin of old, or
Right.
not air quotes old, because they kind of got released late in Mark II, early Mark III kind of days, right? But
Yeah.
they definitely had a great competitive run.
Yeah. Alex coming in here with another great essentially the inverse of the idea I was suggesting. Wander is still going to be good after the update. You know, is essentially you can also look for defensive synergy stacking like Wanderer, where the faction broadly has decent defensive values, but like in a world where Carnage is not ubiquitous, and mat and rat values are like maybe one lower, Wanderer might get to be a little bit exploitative in that world.
Yeah, I mean, that I also found it kind of interesting that it seemed like they weren't really going to touch Infernals at all in the January update, which, I'm sure Corey's happy about because, he barely lost any games with Infernals, and if everything else is coming down and Infernals is staying the same, that feels like a buff for them, right? So they'll be even more powerful than they were. Now I know they are going to get touched at some point because they're going to get re-released, right? And they might get completely touched at that point, but up until that
Mhm.
happens, I think they're pretty much going to continue to be the top of the charts um, after January.
Yeah, they very well could be. Um, yeah, entirely possible. Um, well, on that note, I think there's a lot to be said for exploring legacy factions, especially for like, if nothing else, like reliving the glory days. Um, I think there's also a lot to be said for continuing to test prime armies, even though they're going to be probably the densest cluster of changes in these new armies. And I think there's some rewarding regimens for an attitude to take to your game to really maximize value and have fun exploring corners of your factions, right? um and I mean, most of this show is essentially going to be a giant, gamblers off the scrap heap type segment where we'll be going through the factions and talking about, some of our picks. Call me a prospector because I'm playing Malefessor again.
Good for
Yeah,
you.
that's another guy who fell off. Yeah, that's actually a great pick for panning for gold. Um but yeah, we kind of know where the models are that don't see table time. So as you can discover niches and uses and familiarize yourself with them in their suboptimal form, like if they get touched, like you've only got places, the only place you've got to go is up. Um, and this can be from the one thing I would say is like casters are probably going to be the hardest thing to test in this environment because they're losing the rack.
And yeah, you don't know
Casters
what
are
their spells are
probably
going to
going to
end up.
be, huh?
You definitely we don't know what the spells they're going to end up with are, right? Like
Right.
we feel like they're going to keep the spells they have for the most part, right? They're just going to get
One would expect, yeah.
yeah, they're just going to get new spells. So like in my faction, which is Gravediggers, I could feel free to continue to test Boom Boom and just leave the spell rack off and just go with Fire for Effect, which is pretty much what you're taking Boom Boom for in the first place, right?
Right, yeah.
And his other spells as well. Um, it's unlikely that they would also give him dash. That would just, I think, be too much.
Yeah. Do worry about Gravediggers. Gravediggers becoming Winter Core Part 2. That is that definitely can be a major fear. And I mean, Gravediggers and Winter Core seem to have the most similar design. So yeah, I would lie if I said I wouldn't have the same concern too. I think I've put my own Gravediggers on the table once this past year, so maybe that's what I task myself with.
I tend to agree with Alex. I feel almost forced to take Silence of Death on every caster because and yes, I know obviously Rangers get the ammo crate and all this other stuff, but it's like a turn of shooting is not
Mhm.
winning you the game. You know what I mean? Like you might and Brandon says, "Oh, they can kill a heavy." Yes, they can kill a heavy, but it's not it's like 40 maybe 40%, right, of a chance.
Mhm.
They can severely damage a heavy, they can finish off a heavy, they can do a lot of work into a heavy, but you don't want to rely on it, right? And they
Sure.
already get so much help in shooting that it as playing into them, I'm sure it feels like they just do too much work. um but it's kind of like the problem with them is they're like the only infantry that Gravediggers really has.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they're not cheap either, right? They're 8 points, which is not
Although
cheap, but
yeah,
it's not expensive. But they're
yeah,
mid-grade.
in today's metagame, they are absolutely not an 11-point unit. Like you leave that express gunner in the trash where he belongs. Come
Yeah.
January, maybe that changes, but right now, don't bother.
And also, like, I know I hate to say it, but it's like in order to get them to really very well perform, you do have to spend the card to do it. And yes, as Gravediggers do get more cards than the other factions, it kind of doesn't seem like it. But when you really need to there's a lot of times that I feel like as much as I would love to drop that ammo crate and just do work, the scenario concerns are bigger concerns than me
Mhm.
tabling a model, right? Like I have to contest this flag or else I just lose, right? So like, it is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. I mean, uh, those who burn twice as bright burn half as long. Thanks for popping in, Alex. And we got Brad. The shaking background gif is really disorienting. Same here. That's one of the things Keith and I have to put our attention to in this off season is our technical improvements. Um, probably just getting a static version of this. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna tell a little story about the 2023 changeover and what I think is a viable practice methodology that also bit me square in the ass. Um, so I go to WTC. I'm playing Wolf and Debaro, which at the time was the obvious, powerful Storm Legion pair. I think it was just the three casters at the time, even. Um, and I'm running Debaro with a big Passel Jacks, and I'm running, Wolf with a bunch of like mixed pack of Jackson dudes, which at the time what we kept an onion on our belt because it was the style at the time. Um, anyways, I had this random tournament experience, like playing into the late game against a circle player where like a bunch of pieces died. And, I just observed my courser really holding down the game. And I'm like, that's an interesting dynamic. And like how well the courser took out of activation moves, and that it lived alarmingly long into the game because it was almost never worth the resources to commit to it. Anyways, all this is things people figured out, like 2 years ago. But I had this Calder list floating around in the back of my mind. And like, oh, the pressure's on with WTC. I can't really try this out. In the off season, I immediately shifted to let's try Calder with a bunch of coursers and essentially ride her like right up on the line and exploit the crap out of Watcher. It turned out to be awesome. I was really pumped about it and thrilled with where that wild hair off-season testing brought me. Now, I got rug pulled hard because Calder lost Watcher, and immediately the strategy stopped working, and she became a Crusaders call like speed booster. And like, well, crap. So, I think the lessons there are like those wild ideas that you never had the chance to get down in front of you. I think this is the time to uh time to try it out. Practicing things not in your list pair helps you always stay ready for the meta. No reason to wait for the off season. That is absolutely true. I think it depends a little bit. So I got this insight late in the year, but I think you're absolutely right. If I wasn't doing that, Decathis wouldn't have made it to the WTC for me. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, that's a perfect example. I guess always be testing. But I got hit by a bit of a rug pull, and partially I was testing it in off season because that's around the time I became aware of the potential of this play. But yeah, I would say going into this year with spell rack changing and probably a lot of casters changing substantially as a result of that, I would say focus mostly on things like novel configurations of warjacks or overlooked units. Like an easy example of this is like Valiance with a gun arm, because usually you see like hammer or sword, never anything else. Like I can't recall anyone ever playing a heavy barrel or heavy mortar ever. But there's something to be said for, hey, pressure's off. If you're playing games in this time period, it's an awesome time to experiment and have some fun in like a no pressure environment. Sure, let's see how heavy barrels do. You know what I mean?
I mean, it may be legit. I mean, if you can think about maybe taking them with Roscoe, right? Because Roscoe, if you're
Right.
going to take a heavy barrel, at least you're going to be able to shoot it twice on feat turn, right? And
Mhm.
maybe get a little more extra value out of
Yeah.
it. And with enough, with a with a couple of what do you call it? With a couple of those valiants, you probably will be able to shoot a heavy off the table, assuming it's not like under a very defensive feat or has a really strong armor buff or something like that on it, or
Mhm.
somehow
Mhm.
is hyper regenerating or anything, super crazy. But like just an average heavy, you probably could shoot off the table with that feat. And at least for the hammer, I don't think is on the same arm as the heavy barrel. I think it's the shield arm that's the heavy barrel. Usually people take the fists, the slug
No,
fist.
the left hand is all fist weapons except for the shield, obviously,
Oh,
but they're
okay.
all
So the right
fist
hand.
with underslung something. Yes, the
Gotcha.
Valiant we're looking at heavy barrel, heavy mortar, piston hammer, trench sword as the
Right. Okay.
right
Gotcha.
arm options.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a hammer user myself, so there's only one option.
Mhm.
But yeah, if I was, I mean, I don't know. You could take the heavy barrel and the shield, right? Like because you got a volume fire gun on the shield, right? Which is a
Right.
POW 12 and an increased rat or POW 12 with rat 8 if you're shooting a large base with the
Mhm.
volume fire gun, and then As long as, I mean, as long as if you're gonna if you're living the dream, then you may as well drop the ammo crate, and now you got two, whatever, 217s is the heavy barrel, a PAL 15.
Yep.
Yeah, 217s on, with the ammo crate, and then, 216 or however many D316s with the volume fire, right? So it doesn't
I
sound
hate to
like
break
that.
it to you,
Yeah,
but the volley
14s.
gun on the volley shield has volley fire and not volume fire.
Oh, volley fire. Volley fire, volume fire. It's all the same, right?
They could have
Is that
chosen
is
a
that
not
additional
B
die? Is
word
that
for
additional die against the troops?
warriors. It is, yes.
Warriors? Okay, yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that at least will give you a ability for diversity. Man, gosh,
Yeah.
I wish I'd realized that. That would have been so much better in that. Being able to shoot troops off the table would have been
Well,
ideal.
one thing is never going to change given any update. Uh RTFC remains an eternal rule. Read the freaking card.
Well, I read it. I just misread it.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. So novel configurations, because in the, like again, everybody knows where the bodies are buried on the crap systems. So if you're gambling and discovering how to put to use a jack that doesn't really do strong damage in melee, but definitely exerts a hell of a range presence, like, you want to know where that's playable and if it has applications, or at least it's worth experimenting with. Gravediggers can struggle to develop that damage elsewhere, but you know what, like, maybe you're reinforcing the slow game, just with your off meta Valiant pick.
Well, I had a point I was going to make, and then it immediately vanished in my mind. So I apologize.
All good. Let's see. Another speaking of jacks with, like, knowing where the bodies are buried, slash, people not giving them the time of day when the pressure's on. Um High business gassed configurations in Dusk. I've run into them every now and again, and I've been quite impressed by them. It's obviously not like a world beater, but seeing high business gas is like, oh yeah, there's definitely room to monkey around. Numby, there's no off season. Sweat it all the time. I would love to say I could do that, but I really can't. Like, actually, my biggest regret of this past year is that I didn't take a vacation from Brine Bloods and just screw around. Because I got terminally bored with them partway into this year.
Not to derail the conversation too much, but I remembered what I was going to say.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking to myself, like, while you were talking, in terms of testing things out, like, if you're a player that really loves your characters, whether they're heavies or units or models or whatever, maybe you try playing something that is really inexpensive for the same cost and see how that does in comparison. Or if you don't like playing the characters, maybe you do the reverse. Maybe you start putting the characters in and seeing what all the hype about the characters is. And if
Right.
you can kind of like do that, I mean, like, it's a very interesting thing to really kind of play with the really high end point value stuff, and then there also the really low end point value stuff, and see like how it plays for you. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And your priorities shift, because it goes from, like, usually like winning the game to discovering scenarios where these models get to shine. So, like, for me an off-season game where I am, like, maximizing my novelty exposure and, placing wild bets. Um for me, is I'll take a lot of losses in that time, but what I'm really interested in is finding, like, oh, that particular situation was really oppressive to this person. I wonder if I can replicate that indefinitely.
Right. I mean, like, my only experience is with gravediggers, but it's like, how can I replicate situations where, obviously where Plugger gets to go off? And how many
Mhm.
times does Plugger just get trivially removed where he maybe kills a unit, which sucks for my opponent, but Plugger's worth like 2 units, right? So if you
Yeah.
don't get at least 2 units, like, you're right, you're losing, right? Like it's exactly what you said. Like when you're playing with those high value models, like they kind of have to be sacred cows or whatever, right? Like you really have to play very carefully with them. But when you're playing with cheap units, you can be like wild and free with them. Like so even if you like lose one, right? And by say lose one, but maybe not really lose, but you set up a trade with one. Like maybe you get a 10-point Valiant and a 7-point Patriot, right? That's 17 points, same as Plugger. Well, maybe you set up a trade with the Patriot, right? You
Mhm.
know, Patriot goes in, kills a couple of models, right? And you set him up to be charged by a heavy, right? So now the Patriot like kills some models of his own, and then you get to kill a heavy for a Patriot plus a couple of infantry models with the Valiant, right? Or at the end of the day, right? And like it trades favorably than necessarily just having to do all these shenanigans to keep your keep your Plugger alive or your Deuce alive or your whatever your character heavies or character units are, the chosen, or what's this starved, right? If you're playing old Ombre, mostly a lot of old Ombre and Signar where I'm at, so I don't get to see
Mhm.
a lot of other characters, but you
Right.
get what I mean. It's very, you play very differently when you have those different kinds of models, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Gravediggers. Well, there's another recommendation is we know solos have been quite disfavored and disincentivized by this particular scenario pack. So they haven't gotten a lot of looks from people, knowing that their scenario utility doesn't necessarily back up their premium price tag right now. It's entirely possible that that changes. Um, so I think this is a good opportunity to really start screwing around with the solo catalog in your faction, and even more than that, the mercenaries. Because there has been this strong bias toward friendly faction. You often don't see many mercs aside from like Kruger or the super juniors. But there may be some standouts in there if you can figure out how to use them. Like when I was re-exploring Kador, a while back, one of the models, one of the models I found was surprisingly impressive in Winter Core was actually Prisoner. Um, Prisoner, you try and run her like an old school Doom Reaver, and she dies real fast. She dies doing nothing. But if you hold Prisoner back as like a solitary, like, oh, I ran a direwolf forward, you need to send a ton of models to come and bring that direwolf down. Prisoner likes seeing a ton of models clumped up in a C shape. And like when I started using her as a counterpuncher piece, I'm like, she's dope. I'm gonna use this all the time. So that's an example of particularly digging into your mercenary catalog and solos.
Right. I mean, to know me here, I'm actually hyped about the upcoming update. If I'm assuming dropping the rack, and lethality gives legacy factions a slightly wider selection of viable models I often need to optimize just to have a fair chance. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we were talking about earlier in the episode. The legacy factions, maybe, and like some legacy factions might already be on par with their prime counterparts, and if the spell rack gets, well, we know the spell rack's going away, now, that's kind of more equalizing the difference between the legacy and the prime factions, right? Because the legacy factions didn't have a spell rack, you know, so.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, let's Tyrants on the Field and Brad 2026, the year of the power attack, in conjunction with the observation that models like the Avalanche or the Drakion essentially do constant knockdown enabling through slams, which may entirely offset this whole domain of problems.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Uh yeah. So I mean, I think our chat is already starting to sell specific lottery tickets here. Um let's let's dive into some off the scrap heap. So, and once again, everybody knows where the bodies are buried. So, I've just thrown some picks in here where I think it's like, okay, these models have surprised, like underperformed, maybe not surprisingly this year, but they might be due for a comeback. So the first on my list, just going through the prime factions in alphabetical order, is the Necro Harvester. Now, I'm not super fluent in this guy, but I've in my time run into a lot of Crix players giving this model a lot of stick. Shane Irons wound up going to 4th place in the Invitational with one list running 2, but that's like kind of the only time you saw these guys this year. So what we're looking at is a model that collects corpses, and if it's fully fueled up on corpses, can do some decent damage. And it's mostly about either its ability to do damage when it's all the way corpsed up, or dropping off guys who are made of explodium. It's like the dream is the Necro Harvester goes in, kills a bunch of things, drops off some explodey dudes, and the explodey dudes punch even deeper past the Necro Harvester, and then you manage to refill the Necro Harvester over the course of the rest of your turn. I like I said, not my particular bailiwick, but
I just want to
Brad
say,
used
Alex.
him in WTC Kythos.
Yeah, I just want to
Man,
say.
I am just ignorant.
I just want to say, Alex, I don't know anything about this model, but the only thing I heard from you when you were discussing him is that he's single-handedly responsible for all of Old Umbre.
What?
With all the corpse collections and shenanigans.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, with all when he gets full up on corpses, he goes crazy. It's like the whole faction is just this guy, different iterations.
You won't be able to fight the Animus for their corpse generation, but maybe you can pick a fight with Veroni over some bones. Yeah, so kicking over to the other recommendation, like this model's brand new, but Deathjack, like he's out at this point, right?
He's out. Yeah, he was released at the Lock and Load event, right?
Yeah.
But it's like the obvious thing is they're getting rid of spell rack except for Crix, right? Like, do you want the spells on Deathjack, or do you not?
You always have the spells
on Deathjack. A
spell
spell rack if you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this guy, I think, and the line at Lock and Load was, these are rules for now, not necessarily rules for January. But I think this guy is worth playing around with. And I mean, you can expect some things to remain consistent, like his ability to cast spells and stuff like that. It's always been a signature element of the Jack. So I think just building up table proficiency in advance. Oh, Brad is pointing out his 3-inch melee drag is a pseudo threat extension in an army that doesn't threaten far. That is actually a really good point. Thank you for pointing that out, Brad. That is drag on the Necro Harvester. But yeah, Deathjack. If I had to guess, I don't think he's going to turn out too terrifically different than we see. And yeah, man, just having that kit of spells, and I think building up proficiency with him now is going to be a good bet for what to do with your time. Any picks for you, Keith, on Crix, or are we moving on past him?
I think I am not the person to talk to about Crix. Cass would definitely have things to tell you about Crix because Cass played a lot of Crix in Mark II, and was definitely looking at Crix again post January, because they were almost going to play Crix instead of Convergence, but I didn't want to spoil any of the technology that Cass has, so I wasn't going to talk about Crix.
Yeah, we'll keep it secret, and we'll kick over to your bailiwick. So we're looking at Gravediggers. My two picks are once again on the theme of like, well, there's nowhere for this model to go but up. And like, even if the
Famous last
games aren't
words.
necessarily like game defining, it's still worth exploring just in the chance your number comes up. So number one I have on there is the heavy field gun. What do you think about this guy, and where this guy, like, what this guy's prospects are?
I don't know if I could take him if he was worth half the if he costed 4 points.
Oh, that's brutal.
I play a very aggressive game, and I
Mhm,
don't. I like to try to win by turn 4 or 5. So let's live in a world where the game ends by turn 4 or 5, one way or the other. How many actual shots does this guy get? He gets 3 shots. None of them are boosted, unless you're taking him specifically with Boom Boom Cloud, because he's got fire effect. Like
mhm,
how much do these things? They can't contest anything. They can't
mhm.
move. They contribute almost nothing to your entire force. So like at what point value are they worthwhile? Like
Right.
and not only that, but there's a hidden they're 8 points, but they're really more expensive than that if you factor into the cost that you have to bring flare for them to actually shoot anything
Mhm.
far enough
And
away.
leverage their ability to ignore line of sight.
Right. So like they've actually it says point cost 8, but it's probably actually really closer to 10 because of that, and because they have a static threat range of 14, right? It without it,
Mhm,
right? Because they just
mhm.
can't move, and also can't contest, and also can't score. So like, what are they doing for you?
Right.
Are they giving me 3 shots for 8 points? I
Right.
mean, I can get
Yeah.
three similar shots for 8 points every turn with a unit of rangers that can score, and you know what I mean, like
Mhm.
do just as good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely get that, like, 'cause I used to play a lot of the, Shrine of the Lawgiver, particularly in Creator's Might back in Mark III. Having a structure can complicate your deployment a lot, because if you get it wrong, it's going to be an extremely costly mistake. This guy isn't as expensive as Shrine of the Lawgiver, but I think you're right to point to particularly his reliance on flare, in that he is relying on infrastructure that's not necessarily as readily available as one would want in the faction.
Right. I mean, comparing it to the I don't remember what it was called, the bunker that was in Signar near
Yeah.
Mark III or end of Mark II, Mark III. And while I wasn't it in certain scenarios for that one, you could actually deploy it due to the rules in certain scenarios, very on the tippy edge of contesting, so it could contest in those situations. And it also brought something that the faction didn't do super well at the time,
Mhm,
which was a recursion. Like if you brought it
mhm.
with trenchers, you could kind of just like contest forever with trenchers that kept being brought back every turn, right? And while its guns weren't super relevant, it could almost deploy up halfway up the board, you know what I mean, and do a little bit of shooting.
Yeah.
But
Well, like I said, just based on where this model is now, it's not possible for it to go anywhere but up.
well, they could increase the point cost on it, and it would go down. But
Yeah.
other than that, yeah, I'm with you.
Let's talk Assault Strider, because I know you really want to dig into these guys, and I feel like they're almost there.
They are.
If you're experimenting around and just trying stuff out, I think this is a winner for just getting experience to put more of an edge on a model that's like just under metagame relevance in 2025. And I think it's a strong bet that this model is going to be relevant in the future.
I I think that for the most part, Gravediggers, there's not a lot of things in Gravediggers that you can say. I mean, when I say Gravediggers, I mean actual Gravedigger models. I'm not counting Deuce, and I'm not counting the Black 13th, because they're not technically Gravediggers models. Um, there's not a lot of really like overpowered models in Gravediggers. I definitely people will say that Plugger is, and I'm not going to argue that point. I can see that either way. I don't particularly like Plugger, and I don't
Hmm.
really like bringing him in my list, and I know that I'm an outlier for that. I just think his point cost mitigates a lot of times his value. But in any case, I think Vargas definitely is an outlier and he should be brought down. I don't know if just him getting the rack is going to be enough to really, honestly, if I was really honest, I would say in order to bring Vargas under control, he would probably need to lose field marshal fleet, and then obviously having a set rack would be probably all that needs to be done to bring Vargas in
Hmm.
line. Um, and if that's not enough, I would go further from there. But I think that if you do that, he's pretty much the best, still the best caster in the faction, but not crazy. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Where you're just gonna auto drop him every single round.
Right. So, I mean, I, I think the Assault Strider could definitely have a home with Vargas. I think just this thing does bring a fair amount of firepower. And if we see a change to solo relevance in scenarios, I think this guy could very easily be a big beneficiary of that because that solo tag is really a weight around his neck. Unlike classic battle engines, he doesn't really have a great home right now. But if scenario changes to be more accommodating of that, like so
Well,
much.
I meant to ask you this when you were talking about the last one, when you said it out about the solos earlier, which is, do you see a world where in 2026 solos a single solo can score scenario terrain instead of having to have two models? So maybe like two of any model, but if you just use a solo, it could be one, right?
I have no idea.
I mean, what do you think? Do you think that would be an interesting rules change? Like that would give the
I
solos a little
mean,
bit more value, right?
yeah,
Like I
yeah.
don't know that it would be really that overpowered because most of the time you're going to have a lot of models there anyways. But
Mhm. Well,
it gives a
also
little
just
bit more,
having
right?
if you've got a close flag with this guy hanging on it, and the only thing he needs to do is be there, but your opponent needs to get rid of him and dump two or more models in that flag, that could be a serious intimidation factor because like volume fire guns, big cannon, um like the kind of volume of models you would send to try and take a piece of terrain off this guy are not exactly going to be thrilled about walking into that level of firepower.
I mean, I think the math suggests if you take all of his guns into account, and he has quite a few of them, is if he goes into a unit of medium-based infantry, he should win. Like he's gonna alpha strike them and probably take off one and a half of the models. They're gonna counter strike with a charge, and they should fail to kill him, um, because they've lost the model, right? Which is
Mhm.
pretty significant on counter charge damage. And then on the following turn, he uses the guns to finish them off, right? And so I think he ends up winning that trade. So to be honest with you, I think he's very, very, very fair model. Like,
Mhm.
and I guess really, when you're looking to put together a winning list, you're not looking for fair models. You're looking for, a little bit better than fair models, right?
Right.
But the problem is, like with Fire for Effect in the faction, and I believe these were designed with Fire for Effect in mind. As soon as you put Fire for Effect on this guy, he becomes a lot more powerful than that. And
Mhm.
the comparison a lot of times I think is to the Bison, which is a very similar model, but Bison doesn't have access to Fire for Effect, and I think I probably rather have a Assault Strider than Bison with with the Fire for Effect. I do like Bison for other reasons. Like the Bison does bring a lot of utility that this
Mhm.
guy does not bring, which cannot be ignored.
Yeah.
So I do like the Bison for that. So like I feel like they're very similar but different models.
Mhm.
And I think this guy is not. I think he's
It's
fair, and
it's
I
it's
think if he's not touched, that he's probably going to be continue to be fair.
yeah. Wait, it's very easy to see, like, because there are a lot of levers that can shift and affect this guy. And, you know, I think it's very easy to see a world where like any one of those switches moves in the right direction and the Assault Strider roars to metagame efficaciousness.
Right. Now, if you want to talk about things that I think will be touched in Grave Diggers, I think that Hasker is at the top of my list because
Yeah,
that guy is literally the lowest win percentage guy in the faction in terms of
poor.
casters, which is really unfortunate. I mean, I think it's largely to do with his feat. I think he's got some very interesting things that he's got going on his spell list and his abilities. Um, and the other kind of problem with him is not really great ways to hand out concealment in faction.
Mhm.
Um, like you can do it, and my thoughts
This
about it are like bringing Big Pig for the 3 inch of anything within 3 inches gives concealment. Uh,
for the Kill Bill fans out in the audience, this caster's motto is "My name is Buck, and I'm here to lose games." Yeah.
I mean, I think if his feet was a little more consistent, like if even if the damage part of it was not consistent, but it automatically knocked you down if you ended in it, I think that would be enough of a bump to make his feet very relevant, especially in scenario play. Like you could feed on scenario elements and just be like, cool, you can stand here, but I'm definitely going to kill you next turn, especially, especially in a meta where we feel very confident that Matt and Rats are going to go down, and the value of knockdown will go way up. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, I specifically avoided casters for this list, but like all weekend at Lock and Load, I'm like after the announcement, every time like talking to somebody anywhere near like the Steamforge like banners and stuff, I'm like pointing at the Buck Hasker illustration, like put your chips on this guy.
I really like him. I really want to make him good. I think his if his feet could be consistent, like if there would be a consistent part that does not rely on a die roll, whether it's the damage or the knockdown or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, I know it also makes it a rough terrain, but there's so much Pathfinder that rough terrain almost seems like an afterthought. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it's a thing that is there, but like everything flies or has Pathfinder, easy access
Right.
to Pathfinder that it doesn't. It's almost unconsequential.
Right.
Um,
And what are the odds that that anything in Kickstarter doesn't have Pathfinder?
the other kind of weird thing about his feet is the new model or the new unit placement things, like right. So it's kind of hard to imagine how to place his feet so that it's effective,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But
Because
let's.
go ahead, go ahead.
Oh,
No,
I was gonna go ahead and finish up on
no,
on.
I'm done with him. Like, I
Okay,
mean, I want to play him next year. I
everyone was
really do.
done with him by about like
Yeah.
April of this year. All right, let's kick over to one of my like. Now this is gonna be like an outside one, but like Tempest Thunderers. Um, this is a unit with like no effing rules. Like,
They have critical thunderclap. They have brutal charge.
yep,
I like
conditional crit
Thunderers. They're
knockdown, which is neat.
17s at base in a faction that has access to Arcane Shield. I mean,
I would
do they
be
also have
less worried
Shield
about
Wall?
their
No.
I would be less worried about their armor value, although arm 17 8 boxes is not terrible, especially if you're looking at using these guys for like an Ulcor Barrager type role where they're babysitters. You know, some things about the faction are just like core to the identity and exceedingly unlikely to change. Ionization. Um, you know, the POW on their guns is always going to be too higher than printed, or at least it will like well into the late game. And like if you're designing for ionization, it's always going to be meaningful. And I highlight these guys because like they don't do anything flashy, but they're like another model where if you change like one lever on them, they could really come into their own.
If they keep 12 defense and mats go down across the board, they're going
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
surprisingly more tanky than you think that they are, or that they are right
Absolutely.
now. And
Yeah.
really,
Reasonably survivable.
these guys might be like real gold in 2026 because of this critical thunderclap. Like it's an AoE, it's AoE too, which means into other heavy infantry, only one of them has to crit thunderclap. Only one of the shots has to crit thunderclap, and you've knocked down the entire an entire opposing, 3-man infantry unit,
Hmm.
and anything
Yeah.
can just go in and kill it at that point. Like you're auto hitting, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you can choose to just victimize a low defense model and a cluster of models you want to hit and be like,
Right? Yeah.
all right, yeah, let's take that 1 in 6 chance 3 times and see if I can just randomly ruin your day.
It surprises me. I've been really paying attention to how many times I see crits rolled on 2 dice, and it surprises me how often it is. And I think to myself, man, that was a crit shred I could have had, but nope.
Mhm.
Or a crit brutal on the sniper rifle for the Patriot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think there's, just like if things move the right way, or if these guys get specific balance touches to like, there's a number of directions you could take them to where they could be a sleeper hit, and I think it pays dividends to build a familiarity with them now.
I think that I'm not a Tempest Knights player, but it seems to me like the crit thunderclap is gold. But I think that there is quite a bit of crit, or there's crit knockdown. I think on the cavalry as well. If I'm not,
Yeah, they have crit knockdown on their
yeah,
lances. I think it is thunderclap. Let's check. Yeah, crit thunderclap.
right. So I mean, they might have enough like incidental knockdown in faction that they don't need to take those guys, but
Hmm.
you know,
Right.
you might it might be like a thing, a meta choice next year,
Right.
that you're just bringing all the models with incidental thunder with incidental knockdown
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's just gonna be like free damage that
Hmm.
is underappreciated or undervalued with the
Yeah.
free hits.
Yep. No, yeah, yeah, and just like two numbers that, I think are deserving of attention. Base range 12 for a babysitter unit is quite good. If this number sticks, this can be a relevant unit exposed to very little danger, which their defensive line lets them be quite hardy against. And then just close your eyes and add +2 POW to these values. Um, so their guns already hit decently hard. If they get to stay in that kind of ballpark, it could wind up being a quite relevant unit.
Yeah, I mean, early game they just get to sit back and shoot, and then mid to late game they get to charge in with their PAL 14 blades, right?
Yep.
Because the brutal charge. And PAL 14 is, three PAL 14 charges is maybe not quite enough to kill a heavy, but it's pretty close that, you're you're
It's
likely to
it's
kill it.
it's letting it know it's been in a fight.
Yeah, and I guess they get to shoot with a gun too, right? So
Yeah.
probably three gunshots and three, especially if you shoot with the gun first, right? You can shoot with the gun first, see if you get the knockdown, right?
Mhm.
And then all your charges automatically hit. That heavy and the rest of your gunshots, that heavy's done. Like
Mhm.
they're not to be trifled with, in the mid to late game.
Yeah. Absence of pistol hurts, but
Oh, I thought they did have pistol.
nope.
Oh,
Nope,
okay.
they got
I'll
dual
have to
attack
take
but
back
no
what I said.
pistol.
Okay, gotcha.
Either way, I mean, you can roll dice at anything.
True.
Let's kick over to Dusk. So, this one, Dusk has both like there's an expectation that a lot of changes are coming to Dusk, so it's hard to pick any one thing in particular. I would say new models, particularly the final hunt stuff. Much like Deathjack or Aztarak, like at a guess, these are probably pretty close to final form. So I think it's worth taking some familiarization time with these guys. Um,
I mean,
I Go ahead.
in a meta where in a game where they don't actually, I don't think, have to do anything. They could just like if nothing happens to them and everybody else loses Matt and Rat, don't they effectively just get buffed in that regard? Like they
Because
might
you've
not.
got Chiller running around on
Yeah,
two medium heavies.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you only have to do it twice, right? Now instead of 3 times.
Oh no, Chiller is just a static -2
Oh, gotcha.
defense while within two.
Okay.
But
Sorry,
you
I was
also
thinking.
have ability to freeze coming off of Linissa in multiple forms as well.
Right.
Yeah. The other one I would say, I mentioned trying out business ghasts in the earlier part of the episode. One I would say though, there's been like, despite John Damaris's crusade, there has been not a lot of uptake of cheap eidolons. I would suggest, try them out. If for whatever reason you were holding off or sticking to like a sort of meta orthodoxy, seriously, try out the cheap eidolons. They are significantly better than you would expect.
Eidolons. I mean, I'm a huge fan personally, and I mean, Gravediggers honestly do have very good jacks. They do have, the Valiant is Mat 7, Rat 6, and the Patriot is Mat 6, Rat 7. Um, and I feel like there's a lot of value to be had in the boxes and defense and armor of those jacks. And it will surprise you how durable things end up actually being, because it only takes one or maybe missed attack, and all of a sudden your Jack goes from being completely crushed to having enough systems left to activate next turn and getting to retaliate. And as soon as that happens, you automatically, or nearly automatically, made your points back, because a little Old Faithful, little Empower going on, and all of a sudden, you're just boosting damage into things, and where you had a lost model. I'm not sure what happened to Cosma there.
Right. My video's off for now, but I mean, so like Mat 6 was the bane of the Eidolon very early on in this edition. Eidolon's base defense 12, it, essentially, if we look at a lethality hit and accuracy, like, you may be subjecting everyone else to early Mark IV Eidolon's pain, where they're coming in needing 6s to hit. And if you can have economy heavies, in that sort of offense versus defense dynamic, I think it's actually a pretty killer break point to be on when you're in the neighborhood of like 10, 11, 12 points per jack.
I found that the Valiant's 1219 stat line has caused it to be significantly more durable than I would have thought. I mean, the number of times when my opponent needs 6s, or even sometimes even only needs 5s and just misses attacks, and my heavy's sitting on 3 or 4 boxes, and like I said, you just Old Faithful, and now they don't have to charge. And if you don't get free charges, a lot of times it's better not to charge, because a lot of times the math works out in that way. I remember we talked about this in the math-isode that we had earlier, and hopefully our audience remembers it as well. But the 1219 stat line ends up being a lot more durable, and
Yes,
obviously they're not gonna survive every time, but
I mean,
they will survive more than you think.
People did the numbers deep dive on defensive stat lines for heavies back in Mark II, and like evaluating real threats like Bane thralls and stuff like that, things that were prevalent at the time, are being killed by another heavy. And it turns out, on the numbers, the most survivable common stat line at the time was the Warpwolf stat line of 1417. Right behind it, very close in the results, was 1219, the Titan stat line. 1219 is quite respectable, and if that defense value ever becomes relevant, that can be pretty terrifying.
Right, you get a Jake's feat and it goes to 14, or if you get to drop a rock wall, or if you can get a defense that you've already baited out their sapper or something like that, or you can hide behind, kind of edge around a corner of a house or something like that to get that little bit of a defense buff. 1419 is a very difficult stat line to deal with, especially when other heavies are them needing Mat 6, them needing to roll hard 8s. Is difficult. Even hard 7s, they should miss half their attacks. They should. I mean, you should feel very confident that you're going to survive if they only hit you half the time.
I don't know. I never feel confident anything survives in this game, but I mean,
That's fair.
we may just be experiencing the break points going to the point where you can be
Right.
So I mean, I think that's a winner. Honestly, John Damaris was like on a crusade for this, and I'm like, I am once again begging you, please try out cheap Eidolons. Kick it over to Old Umbre. This is a rough one to pan for golden.
What do you mean the whole faction is gold? It's like I'm panning for gold in a gold mine. It's
Right,
like
yeah. Yeah, exactly. I would say novel experimentation. You know, novel experimentation, just quick recommend, maybe try running an Old Umbry list that just has no reliance on the corpse economy. It's like Kazimir Moratov is, just sort of natively lends himself to this, but I bet you can wind up in some pretty nifty places without, forcing yourself into 15 points of support. Even as good as it is, I reckon, hey, try it out, see where it lands.
I reckon that if you didn't already sell your Old Umbre army after the keynote dropped, you're probably stopping. Because you know
Oh
that they're
man.
going to get nerfed. I mean, like they are so durable. Think about this. They're durable right now to the point of like ridiculousness. Imagine if they didn't get touched at all and everybody's mat and rats came down, like there's just no way that like you could ever kill them. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I mean, the effort to kill them would be so high that their counter strike would just, you know what I mean? They would be in a target rich environment for sure.
Yeah. I one to you know something to think about too. I know this guy's been mentioned a lot with the imminent release of the Gorger. um Bodan Lesnoy did not get a lot of attention this past year, and I think he's really worth reevaluating. Sure, Rack is going to change, but like even after Rack changes, he is still an insight caster. So, give this guy the time of day and see if you can get yourself used to keeping him alive. I played against him at Lock and Load, and he has the potential to be a massive metagame terrorist.
Remind me, is Murder of Crows a cloud?
Murder of Crows, yeah, that guy is no, it's a damage AoE. Oh no, is it a cloud?
It says put a cloud effect template.
Yeah, I guess it would be a cloud. I don't know. I have to go back and look for similar wording. I honestly don't remember.
If that guy has a cloud and insight, I mean, it shouldn't really matter what his rack is after that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's
keep himself safe. You put a cloud against an obstruction, you create yourself a very large, area of pretty good protection. You know, for a lot of your models or your caster, and then you have insight to put on things to just blow whatever you need to get blown up. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a caster lottery ticket I am perfectly happy to sell. Like, this guy was seriously overlooked, and I doubt, what makes him strong is going to go away in the rack change because it's intrinsic to him. Let's move on to Shadow Flame. This is another weird one. Because much of the catalog does see play, but it's obviously dominated by standout pieces like the Trichomerics, the Wyvern, the Lashers. One thing, and again, this is a function of the scenario packet. One thing that doesn't get as much play is, aside from things like the Wraithwing Paragon, their solo catalog in general has some interesting and compelling things. Maybe they're not all the way where they need to be yet, but I would say start to build up familiarity with some of these solos, because models like Riven are pretty dope. And if he starts to land in a place where, like, okay, maybe there is solo relevance, or maybe he gets like a targeted, whatever. Like,
I mean, the problem is you're talking about a 6-point solo. Okay.
mm-hmm.
Some factions can buy an entire unit for 6 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a solo doesn't have any special
Shadow Flame
support.
is one of those factions.
Right. And so it's like The problem is it's like you're competing with other things at similar costs, right? Like,
Mhm.
how good does a 6-point model have to be in order to actually be worth 6 points? And as a solo, like you've mentioned already, he doesn't have any special scoring rules, so he's not really
Mhm.
helping you any extra. Like, obviously,
Right.
he can score terrain, but that's really it. Um,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, I suppose the broad point here is, like, you know, there's a lot of things moving at once, and, what I would say is take your off-season time and start to familiarize yourself with how these models operate on the table, because you don't wanna be in, like, March or April, essentially leaving money on the table because 'cause you're locked into a past paradigm. Like, you wanna know when there's gems that are worth chasing, if some of the changes break their way, you know what I mean?
right. And for some of these solos in particular, like my big thing when I'm looking at lists, and Cass will tell you this, is like it's for me, it's all about point costs. Like,
Mhm,
when I'm looking at a 4-point solo, like, is he going to do half a unit's worth of work? You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like, what kind of rules do you need to have? Like, 4 points is like almost a full light for me. Like, I could take a 6-point Patriot, right? And like, are you like, for 30, for 2 more points, I could get something with 26 boxes, you know, and 13, 17 defensive stats, and
mhm,
have the ability to have boosted PAL 12s, all the time, right? Like, does my solo do that? Well, if the answer is no, it's gonna be pretty hard to justify. Like, you have to have some pretty decent rules. Like, I take Stella a lot, and it's 3 points that I'm investing mostly. I mean, it's 3 points that I'm taking to have precision strike, but the range on her gun is 12, which is just like what you were
yeah,
talking about earlier, where
and
she
it's
can
what,
contribute
a
too much
12-8
to.
brutal damage or something like that?
Yeah, and it contributes. Like, I'm getting three. I feel like I'm probably getting 2 points, or close to a value from the gun at least, and another full point at least for precision strike. But I mean, I'm only taking her in lists where I have multiple units of like rangers and
Mhm,
and things like that, so that because I really want the precision strike. Otherwise, I kind of, it's hard for me to like just justify her for just a gun, which is
yeah,
hard to say because it is a 3-point boosted PAL 12, which is pretty efficient, I guess. So I don't know. Uh, so yeah, Stella probably is worth it. 3 points for a
yeah,
boosted PAL 12 is pretty good.
mhm.
Uh, but
Speaking of probably worth it, Brad mentioned this, with the premium on knockdown going up. Honestly, in my opinion, and I've had conversation with Chimera players explaining why you don't see much of the Drakion. But if I'm honest, my gut intuition is this guy is still criminally underplayed today.
that guy
You know,
looks amazing. He's a
whether
great
what
counterpuncher. You got trash, right? Like,
yep.
all you have to do is get something knocked down, and if you can do it with a cheap solo, like, there's
Uh
a surprising
he
amount of solos that can just. I mean, I
he
know he
he
probably has
can he
knockdown on his own,
Keith,
right,
he
with
can
smite.
do it himself.
Oh, it's not crit smite. Okay,
No,
it's
it's
regular
just
smite.
smite,
Oh yeah, so he
straight
just
up.
does it. Yeah,
This guy charges you, slams you, follows up, and then starts hitting you with trash attacks.
yeah. Boosted PAL 13s.
Yep. And 11
You're just buying
11
attacks
19.
that auto hit, right?
Yep. And 11-19 with an unyielding animus is just like that's pretty choice. So, yeah, even if nothing changes, you should probably be playing more Drakion than you currently are.
How much is he? He's 11 points.
Yeah, yeah, he's cheap.
I mean, you say cheap, but that's like my standard heavy cost as far as I'm concerned.
Fair enough. He's cheaper than the Vrogger.
Yeah, he is cheaper than the Frogger. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of value, right? An 11-point heavy is, that's got boosted 13s and auto hitting boosted 13s, basically, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think he hits hard way better than people think,
Yep.
if they're not taking him.
Let's see. Brad pointing out neat tech. Incarnate Conjurer near your own models on fire also reduces your own attack rolls. How fun! Yeah, those fire synergies are just like not particularly well realized right now, and need a revisit. I feel that pain in Brine Bloods, and looking at poor War Chief Boggity Bomb. But let's kick over to Orgoth. So the lion doesn't concern himself with second lists, but the game designers probably should.
Well, we
so,
know what's going to happen. Harusk is going to come down, and then
there's also like Harusk's raw power is really highlighting how much this faction lives in his shadow and really needs help. I would say some models that are like less almost there than the Assault Strider, but pretty close to almost there. The single wound infantry, I think, is just worth testing. Like, there's no way these models don't get a look. Brad pushing that Moloch. Yeah, I often forget Moloch exists. It'll be exciting to see what happens to him. But I would say one of the models that stands out to me right now is the Strike Reavers. Who knows where they'll wind up with
these guys. These guys, I don't know why people are not taking these guys. These guys look complete. If I was playing Orgoth, I would be taking these guys, maybe even 2 units of them. Those guys are awesome.
They are Def 13, which means they're going to benefit from a lower lethality realm. I mean,
they're like 13-19s, aren't they?
Under shield wall, 13-17s.
17 under shield wall. Does shield wall also give no knockdown?
It does.
Yeah. 13-19s. That means they're basically immune to blast damage. So if they get hit with a high-powered gun, only the main model might die.
No, they don't. They don't have the shield icon on their battle shield, so it's just shield wall. So they go up to 13-17s.
Right. Oh, well, sorry. I might keep saying 19, but I mean, like, most blast damage is like POW 14, blast 8. Well, blast 8 isn't going to do anything to armor 17. It's just not happening very often.
They're not going to get hit by AoEs, and like much like with assailers, like this range value is just really good.
And the fact that they've got CRA, so you're shooting off,
you're somewhat inherently compensating for the lethality drop. And just another thing about these guys is like, that's just when they get to charge, that's a lot of attacks. Like, one way to overcome changes in lethality is just to throw dice at it.
Yeah, I mean, they can't CRA in melee, but still POW 12s. I mean, if you're just attacking troopers, a lot of times it's plenty to get the job done.
Yeah. No, yeah, these guys, and also just base range 12 is like, it means, single wound. They can die. They can be picked up fairly quickly. The base defense 13 means they are.
I disagree with that. And for this specific unit, they're 13, I mean, that is a very respectable defensive stat.
Yes, they are very, very blast resistant. And the fact is, like, defense 13 puts these guys in a prospectively very good spot in the developing metagame. And just like range 12, every guy has hand cannons. That means, like, it's never not relevant. They're never not relevant. And when they just do the hard send, they're throwing a ton of attacks downrange. So,
if you remember when we were doing it off the scrap heap, the first one, I put these guys.
Yes, you put a ton of Strike Reavers in. Yeah, I think these guys
look so good to me.
Yeah, I think they're due to appreciate. And once again, like, everybody knows the Orgoth single wound infantry like struggles not just to like. They struggle to find a shadow of relevance. Like, relevance is a distant dream that they gave up a long time ago. But yeah, I think becoming familiar with Strike Reavers is going to help a lot. A lot like Dusk. Haven't really had table time with the Deathless cadre, so throw them down. Because
I mean, just think about this, Cosmo. let's assume that like a lot of things come down, but dusk stays the same, and maybe even gets a little bit of a touch up. You know what I mean, in the positive direction.
Mhm.
Like how much is, does that you think end up being a buff for them? I mean, like if they just kind
Mm.
of stay the same or go, some of their stuff comes up a little bit, right? Like,
I
eh,
mean I mean, I think, like, Dusk more than Orgoth is sort of like the king of almost their factions. I
right.
I don't think they've ever been metagame irrelevant, but, like,
Well,
if
you
they
know,
stay the same and everybody gets worse, that looks real good for Dusk.
Oh, well, not dusk. I meant to say Orgoth, but yeah,
Oh, for Orgoth. I mean, I think Orgoth, unlike like Dusk, needs like maybe little tweaks here or there, or you could stand to do a lot of little touches. Orgoth needs a like two heaping scoops of big touches all over their catalog.
I don't know. I think if they stay the same and some things get brought up a little bit, that's going to end up looking like two big heaping scoops. To
Yeah,
be
I mean,
honest
I
with
mean,
you,
part of the problem is like their caster catalog is just like all sorts of out of whack, and like the winner units right now are very easy to identify, and the loser units like just lose starkly. So you know, it,
I think Jay Beatnik
it,
agrees with me. You know, he may be he may be the first cosmonaut, but that's just because he didn't know the gun bunnies existed still.
Mhm.
Um, Deathless Cadre has been doing great for most Argoth folks. They just do so much work for their points,
Yeah.
and I think that's, like I said, that's one of the main things that I look at when I'm building lists. Is like, yeah, some units have derpy stats, but they're cheap as
Mhm.
anything, and like, who cares if they die? They're
Yeah.
going to deliver the things that you want to get delivered, and then those things are going to make all of the points. Well, bunnies didn't get to go up in any of the original things. I think it was just dogs and apes and things like that. But it would have been nice if they would have sent a bunny.
I'm gonna be googling that later, see if they did.
That's funny.
Um, but last one, just like recommending Deathjack, put in table time with Azdarak. I've heard a lot of like skepticism directed toward this model, particularly like, okay, Horus is going to change a lot, and you're not necessarily going to be running Azdarak with him. Just try throwing Azdarak in everything and see what he works with. Like if you're hopping factions or if you're playing Orgoth during the off season, like your list should look bananas.
I mean, let's pretend we live in a world where one of the main designers of the game is also currently one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world. And, he's helping design these models. He probably has the rule set in mind of what's coming forward when this model
Mhm.
got released. You know what I mean? Like, he
Yeah,
might not get touched too much, if at all, and the environment is going to look very different to where this
yeah,
guy, if you already know what he's about, might just win you a bunch of games.
right.
Um,
Well, and I get being a little pessimistic on him in the current environment, but like, imagine if Sabreth is substantially different. Imagine if Orsis is substantially different. Oriax, Kishtar. Oh, I mean,
yeah, he's one of those models that like we think he might be a little derpy right now because we don't know the upcoming changes, right? Like,
yeah. I
and
mean,
and once
I
this
think he's
happens,
dope
like,
personally. I would be all over this guy for months, like just figuring out what turns him on. Uh, shall we what do we got? What direction are we trending, or do they hold how recently they were? I reckon for the character units. Um Hard to say. I mean, it is pretty clear, like if you have had table experience against the execrators, like these guys are obvious winners in the faction right now. Like obvious obvious winners. I like the execrators a lot. I I mean, I would be surprised if they changed too dramatically.
well, and the question though too is, with the late release of the execrators, do you think this might be a model for the troops that are going to be what Orgoth is in 2026? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, like, obviously, these are characters, so they're going to be Mat and Rat 7, or maybe even Mat 7, Rat 6. But that means probably that the rest of the troops are probably going to keep Mat and Rat 6 if they've got it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, and maybe they get some more things,
Yeah. I mean, my anticipation, once again, this unit section is filled with obvious winners and losers. I would not be surprised to see the obvious winners come down a touch and the obvious losers come up, a fair amount. I don't know that the execrators are going to get hit that big, but like I would expect some shakeups in this category generally, just because like really Horus exerted such a long shadow, and so much of this faction was drastically undertuned to begin with.
Well, I just reiterate what I said, which is that, if they don't end up getting some of the winners don't end up getting touched at all, and some
Mhm.
of the losers come up a little bit, that may have the same effect with
Yeah,
everybody, with a lot of other people coming down. So it may not look like a buff, but overall in the big picture, that might be a
right.
pretty big buff.
Right. Yeah. 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 Their base stats are good, and like even if they shave a point here or there, like they're still great.
Right.
Let's see. Moving on to Brine Bloods, and I'm not gonna lie, when it comes to like postseason, I regretted not taking a vacation from this faction then. I definitely am now. But I think there are some interesting realms to experiment. One of which is lights. I think I mentioned lights across the board just generally. Like people don't often test out lights much, but I think it's worth just seeing what these animi and what this platform does if you experiment with variations. Like there might be gold in them, Nar Hills. I don't know that there is, but it's worth poking at, I think, especially when the pressure's not on. Uh the other big ones where I think there's money, fugue walkers, these have seen some adoption. I find it hard to believe that there's a world in which fugue walkers are bad. And like there's a lot of untapped potential too. Like I haven't really seen anyone doing this, but taking fugue walkers with Shadow Tongue to give him a stealth out for his channeled spells is a pretty big deal. Lastly, so one of the things about Brine Bloods is like this is a faction with like real winner rack spells, and a bunch of junk nobody takes because only two, but mostly one caster can actually apply the huge number of offensive spells they have on their rack. So like you're often racking Fortify, Fortune, Fury, Strength, uh sometimes Rough Seas if you're bad at math. Although Rough Seas itself will also benefit, but no racks. So benefit from the drop in lethality because defense troll sucks, but maybe defense troll isn't so bad when everybody's one matter rat
Wait,
lower.
what is defense troll?
12 something.
Yeah, but
Your
we just got
defense
done
12.
talking about how good Defense 12 is going to be in
Defense
2026.
12 on the context of heavies. In the context of these dorks, there is almost nothing you can do to make this defensive profile meaningful.
12, 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even
And
13.
like this past year, people are like, "Oh, you didn't rack Rough Seas?" It's like, yes, because in the current metagame, in a faction of defense 12, Rough Seas is unusably bad. But all that aside, I think models that are going to appreciate fire spitters, I do not like these guys, but again, it's hard for them to go anywhere but up. And then the other one I think is an exemplar of criminally underplayed in its current instantiation. Who knows where we'll be soon, but Pig Shockers.
You know what irritates me is when a model has a weapon has a name but does not have the have the rule.
Oh,
right? It's electrified harpoon, so I would expect that it has a harpoon roll, but it does not.
Nope. So part of the reason I point to like start getting used to using odd units like pig shockers is in its current iteration, Brine Bloods does a lot of materializing damage off of their units. With the rat going away, this may not be as guaranteed as it once was. So I would say get comfortable building lists around shockers as your main infantry presence. Not necessarily that they're going to be world beaters, but it may reflect a paradigm you find yourself in, where you're using less extravagant unit options, but they're doing always contribute things like shoot. And then you have to start like shifting your thinking around to developing damage off of your battle group, which I think is going to remain pretty reliable for Brine Bloods, mostly because like the rack situation doesn't affect that terribly. But some, I won't say criminal underplaying, but definitely room to investigate these guys being significantly better than their play rates would establish. I know there were some folks at WTC running them, but they're not common.
I don't know what those guys do.
I
guess they have CRA.
Yep.
I mean, range 10, POW 10 in this meta is like criminally underpowered.
Yes, but it is 5 guys with Electro Leap. That's pretty dope.
What does Electro Leap even do at POW 10? Do you all have like whatever the +2 to electrical damage?
Nope, no plasma nimbus. No ionization. You just clear dudes. You just clear like dorks like Mechanothralls. You clear out dudes blocking heavies, etc. And also just icons wise, this is not a crit. Just if this hits you, you're disrupted.
I mean, that's all well and good, I guess. I bring 3 units of gun mages, so I still don't care. But yeah, it could be annoying, I guess.
Yeah. And you do have to like Voltron some parts, so maybe it's not always worth the points, but these guys are amphibious. You do have the ability to generate water off of Spirit Shamans or off a Deep Dweller, and you're probably playing a booty boss, which means you can give these guys stealth basically whenever you want.
I just have not seen very much single wound infantry, so it's hard for me to justify this POW 10 with Electro Leap.
Yeah, I'm just saying is like, given the changing shape of Brine Bloods, you may find yourself in a metagame where some of these choices that we're not enjoying Pride of Place may start to come to define some of your lists. Just as getting all your favorite tools on Marauder Crew is maybe a thing that's sparser. I think it's worth exploring. Jay Beatnik also, or no, Brad Park coming in here. Matters when combined with knockdown. Get that main gun crit knockdown. Yeah, absolutely. Like you could absolutely run. This is just the knockdown appreciation episode. You could run an army that's like, premised on scoring a lot of knockdowns. Oh, another probably underplayed model, Cannon Crew, cost 3 momentum gun. That's very easy to. And FA4, you can field a ton of these things and then go to town with Zippy Zaps. Go to town with Zippy Zaps afterward, just like, oh, by the way, those things don't get up.
I know, right? I'm trying for you, Jay. But,
Jeff, every time I see myself in a mirror before going to a tournament, I think this thought. Yeah, so those are if I was like just blind, and my point on the troll blood thing is like a bit more esoteric than this is like criminally underplayed, but it's like the faction I have the most experience with, and my prospectus on the faction is this is going to change a lot, and I expect myself, if and when I'm back in Brine Bloods at some point, that it's going to be a really different world from what I'm used to. over the next 2 years. So I would say like start living in that new world now and see where you can, really pick up on the synergies and stuff.
I don't know. I like the momentum gun. I just don't know if it's worth 3 points. It's range
Knocking
14, 14. Yeah.
knocking stuff down at range is worth a lot of points.
It
And
probably
okay, there's some accuracy buffing, like, rat 6 maybe down to rat 5, but like there's a shocking amount of accuracy buffing in this faction for that sort of thing. So yeah, so you think you're ever leaving Brine Bloods? I mean, it might be like the worst case of like being shackled to something is like I was a Scorn player for 17 years. 12 of those years were very rough, a very rough time to play Scorn.
Notice when the beating stopped, he stopped playing Scorn.
That is true.
He needs the beatings to continue.
It was masochistic motivation. Any lottery tickets you want to throw people to spice up their off season and cultivate? Slams have a lot of value beyond KD, clearing landing spots, knocking down the thing behind it. Exactly.
It's true.
Ranged slams are, I think a lot of people in evaluating this game, like abilities that put models on the ground at range are a big deal. And specifically, like slams are an ability that let you move enemy models at range. That's awesome.
Well, and at range 14, which is a very good range. I mean, 12 is like kind of what I look at, and I like, anything with a 12 range, I'm definitely going to take a second and third look at, right?
Uh-huh.
If it's got 14 range,
it's
very safe shooting, right?
Consider that the crab net sort of started to make its debut this year and being like played the faction before they get buffed. Yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean, if you play it when it's in a bad spot, when it gets buffed, like you're gonna feel like really powerful with the faction,
right? And that's essentially the logic here on why I'm saying like start to pan for gold and figure out uses for things that you probably wouldn't think twice about putting on the table, because like I keep saying, we all know where the bodies are buried. Have fun and get ahead of the curve. It turns this like, oh, game be different in 2 months into like really premium practice value. So yeah, any lottery tickets you want to shill, Keith?
No, I don't have like, this would be a great episode for Cass to be on, because Cass really dives a lot into the factions. Cass spends a lot of time in the war room looking at different combinations and things like that, and it's great. I love dojoing with Cass because we have such different views on things, but the Cass really has the knowledge of the factions in a way that I don't, which is fantastic, and which is why I credit a lot of wins that I have to Cass, because Cass always was like, well, we're going to this event, and these are what you're going to see here. Be aware of this, and this, and like definitely, I owe many wins to that. That last minute. Remember about these things. Yeah, Cass was here last week, and I tried to get Cass on this week, but Cass had already made plans because I didn't let Cass know that is a possibility that they could be on until the last minute, and I'm out of town, so I can't bully Cass into jumping on whether they want to or not. So not that I really bully Cass, it's just a joke, but I mean,
well, that's sort of the struggles of the off season that like you even get in the production side of things. Is like everything's just a little more complicated this time of year.
It is,
producer fail. This is a producer win. Like I couldn't secure a guest, so I'm gonna come here and help minimize how much you look like a madman by volunteering as tribute.
Well, a producer fail in the fact that I was not able to get Cast, which I agree with you there. I would have loved to have Cast on this episode. It's
Yeah,
perfect episode for Cast to have been on.
yeah. Well, at all ends, I think what to look forward to. We got Brad. I miss Storm Legion. I apologize if you brought this up. Do we suspect that Electrocutioner in Storm Legion gets the Ice Cage treatment and goes to 2x instead of 3x for stationary?
That's a great question.
That's an interesting one. I would hope so. Electrocutioner is also only -1 defense right now. Like, I think our boy Tyson Vass would feel pretty hard done by if that didn't happen. That would be neat.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it takes, you have to do it. It's worth it at twice, but not really worth it like to do it once. You know what I mean? Like, because is it -2 for the ice cages? I don't
Yeah,
remember
ice
what it is.
cages are -2, and then the new Crucible Guard version is land 2 of them and you're frozen.
Right. So like having a -1 and then getting a stationary might be not bad, because I don't recall that the POW on them is very high, isn't it? Like 10 or 12?
It's not good. The weather station is decent. By the way, this is actually a pretty good Warmachine band name.
Tyson. It is a pretty good Warmachine band name.
Tyson and the weather station. All right. Well, what you can expect from us, guest lists still being figured out. Again, it's the holiday season, so who knows. But what I'm thinking we'll target over this next little period of time, maybe with a small break around Christmas, New Year's time frame, is we fill these episodes by looking at sort of eternal topics. So I think we've had our share of speculating and selling lottery tickets. So I think what's next is like a bit like you did with Cass, is we start looking at eternal elements of strategy that are never going to go away. Hell, maybe one of those is like undervalued concepts like knockdown at range or slams at range.
Well, to peer behind the curtain a little bit, the reason I did that episode like that was because I was trying to utilize the Cosmo notes that you gave me.
Oh, good. I'm glad those weren't wasted.
I'm not trying to I'm trying to use the tools that you give me. So, you know what I mean? Like I told you that I was interested in using them, and I wasn't just trying to sell you like a short bill of goods or nothing. I was legitimately interested in that stuff. I just haven't had the time.
It was great. It was actually really interesting, that you mentioned that, because I'm like, yeah, a lot of these concepts sound familiar, but it was really interesting to watch, two people who are not me take a crack at these concepts, and that was neat to listen to.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, I mentioned the math episode in this episode earlier, JRV, so I apologize if you missed it.
That's some next level trolling.
It's true. I'm sorry.
All right. What do you say? We stick a fork in this one, and we'll come back. Come back to y'all soon. Thanks, everybody.